Hi everyone, welcome to topic 3 or lesson 3. For this week we're going to be looking at the role of GDP and how the role of GDP influences our economy. You'll notice that GDP is looking at how our economy is adding up our wealth, and we add up our wealth with a couple different components. GDP is the most widely reported measure of economic performance because it's measuring 4 different components in our economy. It's measuring consumers, businesses, government, and net exports. If we look at the circular flow diagram, you'll notice that GDP was focused on these components. We're looking at the interaction of how consumers respond to different price changes. And when we look at an economy, consumers are very focused on these different implications. So there's 2 ways we measure GDP. We measure GDP using the real GDP or the nominal GDP. Real GDP is focused on constant prices where output is only changing. Nominal GDP is focused on both constant price changes of output and prices. Here's the 4 sectors of GDP. You got consumers, investment, government, and foreign sectors. Some of the shortcomings with GDP is it doesn't include activities that are unused or used activities. It doesn't include illegal activities. It doesn't include used goods and services, home goods, things that are conducted at home. It doesn't include those particular types of goods and services. So GDP is a way to measure our wealth. So for this week, you have your exam. For the exam for this week, you're going to have 50 multiple choice questions to complete. And when you go through the exam, I have put in some sample test questions in all 3 weeks, which will be very helpful for you. And I'm going to go through some of the questions that you might see with the exam. So the largest component of GDP, that's going to be consumption. You have a definition of demand. What is price ceiling? Price ceiling is dealing with rent controls. How do we calculate GDP? Net exports, that's exports minus imports. Production possibility frontier. Technological advancement is when the graph shifts to the right. Complementary goods. You need DVDs and DVD players. 2 variables that are directly related. They'll move in the same direction. Point outside of the production possibility frontier is not obtainable at certain points. A point inside is attainable and might result in unemployment because we're not using up all of our resources. Baby boom generation. So the baby boomers are not having as many babies. How will that influence supply and demand? It's going to be more of a demand because it's dealing with markets. Changes in wages will influence supply. Consumption, that's consumers spending money on goods and services. The supply curve, what is the relationship of the supply curve? Is it negative or positive? Demand schedule, that's looking at list of quantity and outputs that are available. Substitute goods, you can either buy one or the other good. If net exports are negative, that means we're importing more than we're exporting. Economics has 4 different factors of production: land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. Inverse relationship, that deals with demand. Net exports, exports minus imports. Direct relationship, both of them go together. Taxes. Taxes will influence supply curve. If there's a shortage, that must mean the price is too low. Any used goods and services would not be included in GDP. Factors that cause the demand curve to shift: income, taste, and preferences, expectations, number of buyers. Price is not a determinant of demand. That's just a movement along the curve. Inferior good is when my income increases, I buy less, or the opposite. GDP is looking at all goods that are legal. Increase in demand, demand curve shifts to the right. Positive relationship is the same thing as direct. Inverse relationship is the same thing as negative. Consumers can spend money on goods and services. A price floor or minimum wage would be a good example. A price ceiling or rent control would be a good example of price ceiling and rent control would be good examples. So those are some of the questions that you might see. Make sure to review all of the sample questions I gave you. I think that would be very helpful. And make sure to complete your exam on time as well. And if you need any help with regard to pre-grading your work, let me know as I look forward to your effort.